talk about oppressed people. And I asked them across the country, why don't somebody talk about black folk and the problems of black people? And so I'm looking like Diogenes for a person that understands the history of this country, because I want to understand the problem in America. And the problem is not what you all have been taught. The problem is not poverty. It is not unemployment. It is not unwed teenage parents. It is not food stamps. It's not public housing. It is not drug abuse. Black people only got two problems in America. The first problem is that you've been systematically locked into the lowest level of a real-life monopoly game. That's your major problem. And that's what Dr. Price directly and indirectly is telling you about every Sunday morning. You have been locked into a no-win situation. That means that all the wealth and power in this country has been skewed over 400 years systematically into the hands of the majority white society. Black people don't own a significant amount of anything to be able to control their lives. Whites in America right now control almost 100% of all the income, the wealth, the power, the resources, the businesses, the privileges, and all levels of government. You cannot compete. And I'm tired of hearing people telling black folk, why don't you compete? Compete with what? What are you going to compete with? They keep saying, well, black folk can run fast and jump higher. That won't make it. It won't make it. And let me tell you what monopoly is. Monopoly means that all the wealth and power has been skewed based on skin color, going white, yellow, brown, black. And if you've never played the game of Monopoly, let me show you how it's played. I play it every year at my family. It means that everybody, when you sit down, you're given a certain amount of money and wealth. Black people never got their 40 acres and a mule. Now we're playing this game of Monopoly. And let's pretend for a second in this auditorium that whites got $1,000 to play the game of Monopoly. Asians got $500. Hispanics got $300. Indian got $100. And blacks got $50 to play the game of Monopoly. Now, never having gotten your 40 acres of mule, you don't own any land. You don't own any land. And if you don't have the money, you can't put any houses and hotels on the land if you got lucky and had some. Now, when you roll the dice in our hypothetical game of Monopoly, and you roll the dice and your number comes up on the wrong piece of property, what happens to you? You must either go bankrupt or go to jail. And that's the monopoly game that black folk are locked into. And when that happens to you in life, when you only got two alternatives in life, to either go bankrupt or go to jail, that is called an underclass. And black people in America are systematically being forced into a permanent underclass. We will be a permanent underclass by the year 2013. And you got about a 2.5-year window left. If we don't do some very specific things and start to come up with some very cogent strategies, comprehensive strategies of doing some things to focus on that number one problem of redistributing the wealth and power back into the hands of black folk, you can hang it up. Don't worry anymore about retiring. After the next 2 or 3 years, don't worry anymore about going to college. It ain't going to work. The doors are going to slam shut on black folk. And what I'm telling you right now is we're going to have to get it together fast. And to do it, you must first understand what I'm going to be telling you this morning. And my speech is going to be divided into 3 parts. I'm first going to tell you about the problems of black America realistically. As Cochise and Geronimo said, I'm going to give you the truth about the current state of black America, point 1. 2, I'm going to analyze it for you. And 3, I'm going to give you the solutions that we can do together to come out of it. Okay? Now, we got a very serious problem in that monopoly game. We're going to have a converging forces, social forces coming across this country. About 8 major forces are going to push us into that understructure, in that underclass position. And let me talk about 3 or 4 of them right quick. First thing, across this country, you're going to have an increasing amount of conservatism. Now, I want you all to understand up front what conservatism means. So I don't care whoever uses that word, you know what it means. Conservatism is a new code word for anti-blackism. Okay? Except now a conservative can stand right in your face and tell you and confess that he's a conservative, which means he is a racist and not tell you he's a racist. Racism, right now, we got racism all over America, and I can't find one racist. And what I'm telling you right now, before my book even hit the market, I'd already predicted in my book that you're going to have a cutback in welfare. I predicted in my book they're going to catch people like in Texaco. And they just caught Avis discriminating against blacks in North Carolina, South Carolina. And they just caught Circuit City, Sam's, Walmart's. I knew they were going to try to cut out the single-member districts. I knew they were going to go after affirmative action. I knew there were going to be riots all over this country that are coming. I talked about this a long time ago in the book, because that's what conservatism means. Conservatism comes from the root word to conserve. To conserve means to hold on to what you've got, or those who ain't got, as my mother said in a third grade education, you ain't gonna get. That's what conservatism means. And it means nothing else. It means maintain the status quo. It means use every device that you have to give the pretense that what you see is normal. And right now there's a conservative move in this country going from the White House across this land through the Congress that says whatever exists all over this nation and in Los Angeles is normal. They want you to believe that it's normal to go out in Los Angeles and see all the drug abuse and all the crime, all the poverty, and all the suffering of black folk lying and sleeping on the streets, drugged out, doped out. They want you to believe that's normal. That's what conservatism means, maintain the status quo. It also means to reinstitute white authority, white values, so you hear them talk about family values and all these other kind of things, and also white superiority. So when people start talking about they want to go back and be a conservative, you ask them, what are you trying to conserve? When my people don't own anything and you own 100%, what have I got to conserve? When you hear blacks going around screaming about they're a black conservative, you ask them, what are you conserving? Tell me one point in history that you found something that you want to conserve. Don't let people run that game on you about being a conservative. You tell them, say, fine, if you want to tell me what are you conserving? And when my people have never had anything, why would they want to be a conservative? So the biggest problem we're going to have is conservatism when it goes across this nation. And we as black folk got to understand, now it's not all whites that are conservatives. There is an element that's got everything that want to make that it's the greed over need. They want to hold on to everything. And so, we're going to have a massive flow. Everybody's going to be talking about conservatism. You're going to see people politically switching, talking about they're moving to the far right. And what we have to do is understand that, and that's going to create major problems in this country. One, you're going to, not only will you see an increasing amount of negative hostility towards black folk, every piece of research in the country tells us that, even from the Jewish organizations, that you're going to see more anti-blackness now and in the future than you've ever seen in the last 60 years since you left the civil rights movement. Two, you're going to see organizations all over the country now, paramilitary groups, Aryan groups, Vipers, Freeman, Skinhead, Baldhead, all kind of groups that are organizing and optimistically expecting and anticipating a major clash in this country between blacks and whites. We've had 28 states in the United States now to pass concealed weapons laws. That's specifically so some of the white contingency groups can carry weapons and arms at all times. That's why you have such a major thrust from the National Rifle Association. That's why they're controlling most of your politicians. That's why you have such a major anti-governmental effort in this country. You hear people say, we want to go back to states' rights. We're anti-government. We want to get rid of the federal government. It's not that they're against government. They know that in history, the only people who've ever saved black folk has been the government, twice, the federal government. And if you eliminate the federal government by downsizing the government, black folk no longer have an ally. And if a clash occurs, you got nobody to come to the rescue a third time to help you. You see, you were pulled out of slavery by the federal government. You were pulled out of Jim Crowism by the federal government. There are contingencies in the country that says the next time there won't be a federal government to pull blacks out. And you hear them talk about their anti-government, that's what they're talking about. They're not against government. And later on you hear me tell about why they're not against government. Because you see, primary wealth in this country, the primary responsibility of government is to move wealth and to move power. And that's how the dominant society got its wealth and its power, by using government. But now they want to make sure black folk don't have access to it. That's why they're anti-affirmative action, but I'll get into all that a little later. But so the biggest thing, one of the biggest things that are going to drive us in this underclass structure will be conservatism. The second thing is that you're going to have an unending influx of immigrants into the country. And that's what Dr. Price is talking about. And nobody, no black politician, no black organization wants to deal with that issue. They will avoid it at all costs, even though in their hearts they know that's one of the biggest problems for black folk. We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, yeah. You all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4. And the worst part about it is as you descend and go down to number 4, those other groups are going to go up. And as they go past you, you're going to have major racial clashes in this country. You're going to have fights all over this country between blacks and Hispanics, blacks and Asians, blacks and poor whites. And black folk cannot fight all these groups. Everybody can not always be against black folk. They know that we are vulnerable and we are defenseless. And we cannot fight those groups. Because you see, they didn't come into this country with the legacies that we are stuck with. Everybody in America has an advantaged position but black folk. But all are in a state of denial. The white power structure in a state of denial. They are pretending that everything that they got, that 100% control and ownership of everything, they got it because they worked hard through a Protestant ethic. That's not how they got it. And you always hear them say, well, what you got to do, you got to work hard. Nobody can work any harder than a slave.